British Londoner, I guess.
I can say I'm Asian, I'm British, I'm Sikh.
I do think of myself as British as well as Caribbean.
First and foremost, I'd label myself as a British Muslim.
I would define myself as British. I would define myself as my parents are originally Pakistani.
I would identify myself as young black African.
I am British, but I'm a gypsy.
If you scratch any Britain, you find traces of immigrant blood in there, as well as immigrant ideas and just migrant history.
You couldn't really group us together because, like, we come from different backgrounds, different societies, different way of living. We're just totally different from each other.
Identity and the labels we give ourselves can be complex, but the labels we are given by others are often different, based solely on the colour of our skins, our background culture, our religion, or even how we dress. These labels can be negative and can lead to prejudice and racism.
Police investigating the murder of a black teenager on Merseyside say he was killed in a racially motivated attack.
Racism may be based on skin colour, but it can also be cultural.
No matter how you live your life, you face racism.
You are about to leave the site on the police escort. Thank you.
I don't remember having to move every week when I was a kid. You know, nobody bothered us, nobody moved us along, nobody threw stones at us, nobody tried to burn us out. That happens now.
Racism can also be based on nationality.
There have been scuffles in Glasgow tonight between white and Kurdish youths as tensions grow following the murder of an asylum seeker in the city.
It can also be based on religion.
This 22-year-old student was standing at a bus stop on his way to a mosque in London when he was assaulted. He believes it was because of what he was wearing. Now he's paralysed and partially blind.
I was dressed in my Islamic clothes, and one of them spat at me. I hardly can remember anything. I wanted to go and study, but now how can I study? My future is gone.
Racial violence is the extreme face of racism, but it can also be much less obvious in terms of how we actually perceive and treat people who are different. Is it fair to label someone in a negative way if you don't know them?
Myself, I'm Sikh, okay? But I could so easily be Muslim, I could so easily be Hindu. I could so easily be Bangladeshi, Sri Lankan, I could be from the south, north, west of India, anywhere. No one would know, okay? And the thing is, we'd all come under the umbrella term, if we were to put it in a racist way, Paki.
Young black men have got so many labels: thieves, muggers, rude boys. I mean, anything that can be associated with criminality.
Are these young people following a fashion trend, or are they out to cause trouble? How did this man get his car? Through illegal means or by hard work? The answer is we don't know, because we don't know them. Although we all make assumptions about people all of the time, if we judge someone negatively based on appearance alone, this is prejudice.
I think everyone has prejudices about people, whether they want to admit it or not. I think it's just kind of like you see someone and just before you reach them, you try and suss them out. So you'll say that type of person might be like this.
I went to a friend's house and I came down the stairs in the morning to get a glass of water, and the parents didn't know that they all knew that they were having a party, but they hadn't met all the guests. So I was one of the guests at the party, and it was quite an affluent household. And the mother automatically assumed I was the maid.
When we attribute a set of prejudices based on the actions of some individuals to everybody who belongs to that certain group, it's called stereotyping.
If you judge a whole race or a whole group of people by those few things that you kind of hear most about, it's ignorance to the maximum, because, you know, you can't judge every person like that.
In our everyday conversation, we think about racism in terms of an act of hatred between one individual and another, or an act of violence between one individual or another. And that's obviously one aspect of racism. Racism can also be a kind of belief system. So you might have a belief that one group or another has some superiority to another group, which you may never act out or you may never express, but you still have a racist belief.
I just think that society doesn't necessarily
make young black males feel comfortable in this country, and it comes from the police service, it comes from our education system. You always kind of feel slightly disassociated with society.
If people have prejudices and hold negative stereotypes, they may not treat other people equally. This can be done unwittingly or wittingly, and it's discrimination.
I know in school a lot, black boys were probably treated a lot differently to white boys, and it might have just been because of the stereotype behind them, because maybe they're troublemakers and that's how they'll always be, and so the teachers have to treat them in a certain way to handle it. But then, to a certain degree, that's a form of racism, or it's a prejudiced thought that have led to them being treated differently.
Discrimination is against the law. There's race relations acts which mean that a school has a duty to ensure that everyone in that school has an equal opportunity, no matter what their national, ethnic or racial or cultural background. But obviously a law by itself doesn't necessarily change behaviour.
Prejudice against people coming into the country is not a new thing. Can you guess when and about whom this quote was written?
These unwashed, cringing, lying and wage-cutting aliens who have elbowed thousands of Englishmen out of their home and out of their employment.
I didn't expect there to be any racism then, but then that probably shows that racism is being handed down. It probably shows that the people who are committing the racism has not changed, but the target groups or the victims have changed. I mean, I don't know who they might have been targeting.
It's a wider spread of people now that they can target.
And I don't know who they might have been targeting in 1904, but...
Scottish or Irish, you know.
Yeah.
Or Welsh people.
Yeah, probably who they thought were illegal immigrants at that time.
It was actually written about Jewish refugees, but could have been about any group who had ever come to Britain.
You can go back and look at the history of anti-Semitism, which in England goes back, to 1290, when all Jews were expelled from England. You can look at racism against gypsies, which again hasn't been based on skin colour, but has a long history in Britain. You can talk about racism against Irish people, which wasn't based on skin colour, but on an idea that the Irish were some kind of subhuman species. I guess about 100 years ago really was the heyday of skin colour racism, largely because of the fact that Britain had an empire that took in Africa and Asia, and so race as a skin colour idea became a way of legitimating that empire.
Racism was used to justify the slave trade, when it was profitable to think of black people being closer to animals than to human beings. In the 19th century, some scientists tried hard to prove the theory that black people were inferior. Today, most scientists believe that there is only one race, the human race, and that everyone originally came from Africa.
But a small group, at least, of people came out of Africa, and they formed the ancestors of everyone else around the world. So we all began as Africans, and I think it's true to say that although we may look at the surface skin features and see people in different sizes and shapes and colours, that once you strip away the skin and the superficial covering, underneath we're all very similar. We're certainly one species and very closely related to each other.
So, if race isn't biological and is a social construct, why does prejudice exist?
I think people have always feared migrants or strangers for the same reasons. They fear they will fundamentally alter the culture, I suppose the religious culture or the political culture. It's a fear and a suspicion of anything strange and different.
There's a process where new groups are created as an object of racism all the time. So one example would be asylum seekers who have been recently brought to the fore as a target for racism. No doubt in the future we'll see other groups. So racism changes as society changes.
What is racism? Who are the targets of racists? Racism is not only aimed at people with different coloured skins. It can also be cultural or religious. Islamophobia means a fear of or dislike of Muslims and their religion.
Boy, some people think that Islam is all about terrorism. Mecca to Medina, I'm here to tell them that Islam is all about peace. P-E-A-C-E, Islam. Islam is all about peace.
There are over 1.5 million Muslims living in Britain today, but many feel they get stereotyped.
If I was to go out onto the street here and say, okay, Muslim, what comes into your mind when you say that? There's a good chance people would say terrorism, Saddam Hussein, Osama bin Laden, Iraq.
It's not just Muslim men that are called Osama bin Laden. I was called Osama bin Laden as well. I didn't know whether to be offended or to laugh, you know, it was just quite bizarre.
Historically, there have been periods when Muslims in Britain have faced racism. But in modern times, they had not attracted much attention until 1989 and the Salman Rushdie affair. Salman Rushdie had written a book called The Satanic Verses, which many Muslims felt was blasphemous about Islam, and public burnings of the book were held in some northern towns. The stereotype of Muslims being fundamental extremists took hold.
The Satanic Verses affair was a pivotal moment in the history of British Muslims. Up until then, we were known by ethnicity, either as Asians or Pakistani origin or Indian origin.
Then came the attacks on the World Trade Center in 2001.
When 9/11 happened, then this is when Islamophobia really took off, you know. And every Muslim actually felt it in their heart that they have to, you know, tell everybody that they're against this. So, for example, you felt like if you met somebody, hi, what's your name? Hi, you know, my name's Rakim, you know, I'm a Muslim, but I'm against the bombings. Yes.
I spoke to my wife, who was still in Preston, and she told me, she goes, I was in the supermarket, and she goes, I just had to leave my stuff and just come. She says, because of the looks I was getting off people. She goes, she was really scared. She was physically scared.
And one of the results of the Madrid and London bombings has been to make the whole Muslim community feel they come under suspicion.
As soon as the event happened, the Muslim community was very united in its front between themselves and with non-Muslims in opposing this and saying this is against Islam. And when people are grouping all Muslims together and victimising all Muslims and saying that this is your problem, and feeling that me personally is my problem, I feel I've got nothing to do with these people. These people have nothing to do with me personally, in my culture and in my religion. They have nothing to do with me personally, and nothing to do with me in any kind of way. So to feel that people view me in that light can be quite hurting.
Since the London bombings, attacks on Muslims have increased by 600%.
We have seen increase in Islamophobic incidents. Muslims being assaulted, mosques being desecrated.
Just 1 minute away from my mosque, some people they blocked my way, and they came out from their van and started to hitting me, and then I fell down into the street. I was unconscious. My injury, my cheekbone was here broken, and then now I had an operation here, and then all of these teeth were numb. Still, one of them are dead.
I think that anyone who commits this atrocity in the name of any religion is a criminal, but anyone who retaliates against somebody who's not a suspect, who's not involved in these acts, is a criminal as well. Do you understand? Or else we've got vigilante squad, we've got the lynching and everything that used to happen in the past.
A lot of the perceptions come from the media, and I think probably with people who haven't met Muslims, aren't in communities where there are a lot of Muslims, or even if there are Muslims but they don't interact with them that much, then they're more likely to get influenced by these things and these images.
Much of the media has in recent years, I think, behaved in a very irresponsible fashion when it comes to portraying the faith of Islam and ordinary Muslims. Preachers with hook hands creates a very hostile impression of what ordinary Muslims stand for. Often the media uses phrases like Islamic terrorist, jihad, or and translates it as holy war. And more recently, it's been focusing on the madrasa, which literally just means school in Arabic, a place of learning. And yet it treats them as if it's a terrorist breeding ground.
This was a tolerant society, but now, because of certain events and the way that it's been reported, like, it's become an intolerant society.
And then they said, "Oh, you with that scarf, that should be around your neck." In England, people wear scarves around their neck, not on their heads. What are you doing? And so I just thought, I keep my head down. I'm not gonna. How am I gonna take on a big group of people? Probably, completely intolerant. There's no way I could defeat them. So I just kept my head down. But they didn't want to give up. They kept shouting the insults at me. And their final comment was, "Right, we're gonna find all the girls in Manchester that wear that, and we're gonna tie them up on trees and hang them on trees with that scarf that they wear."
The scarf that many Muslim women wear is actually called a hijab. It makes them easily identifiable as Muslims and has attracted a lot of prejudice.
Islam. Islam is all about faith.
Yvonne Ridley is a successful TV journalist, but even she was unprepared for the level of prejudice she faced when she converted to Islam.
If I'm wearing a black hijab, it's virtually impossible for me to get a taxi. Sometimes if I'm dressing it up with a bit of colour, it's not too bad. But the hostility from some black cab drivers has been quite astounding. And it's certainly been an eye-opening experience for me as a blonde-haired, blue-eyed woman, Western woman. I wouldn't normally be exposed to any sort of prejudices or bigotry.
I do think it's directed at Islam, because if you think about it, if a nun walks down the street, it's very rare that somebody's going to start giving her abuse.
As well as attracting prejudices, the hijab has led to misconceptions about Muslim women, the main one being that they are oppressed.
What do you reckon about this? I don't like the gold.
I'm not forced to wear my scarf. My mum sat in the corner of this room not wearing a scarf. Nobody in my family wears it. I choose to wear this.
I am hardly an example of an oppressed, subjugated female. So why would I embrace a faith that is supposed to oppress women?
Personally, myself, I don't believe that you have to cover your face, and it isn't obligatory in Islam. But some people think that it is, and they do say that. We've got many friends that wear the veil, and they say it is liberating because they can never be judged for the way they look. They can only be judged on personality and for the way they behave. And what a better way to judge somebody than that?
We've got to learn to think in a much more open-minded manner and try and see that religion and spirituality are at the center of some people's lives. And to respect that is also to respect the way that they choose to dress. I'm not denying the fact that there are women around the world, whether they're Muslim or non-Muslim, who are oppressed, who are forced to dress a certain way by men. But I believe that that has very little to do with religion. That's more to do with cultural aspect.
The reality is that Muslims are incredibly diverse. They come from many different countries. There are over 56 Muslim-majority countries around the world. So to paint them as being some kind of a uniform colour or uniform background is utterly untrue. Quite often, this kind of Islamophobia is a result of ignorance. People simply do not know much about the faith of Islam or their fellow Muslims, and they regard them as intruders upon Britain. They regard Islam as a faith, an alien faith, a faith of violence.
The irony is that Islam is a peaceful religion based on morals and respect.
Islam is all about faith.
It's the opposite to being a terrorist, bombing people. It's about peace of mind and peace of body.
In Islam, there are a lot of moral teachings that, particularly in terms of responsibility to, yourself and your family and your community.
I'm sick and tired of seeing Islam displayed as a terror religion. The truth's been mislaid. We told you already, don't believe the hype of the media. Everything's a stereotype.
I think we have to be to break down these perceptions, misconceptions of Islam, we have to actually go out there and tell people about it.
I think that the non-Muslim community should actually be engaging the Muslim community, meeting with the leaders, right, and trying to, get discussion going.
It's my responsibility to kind of be understanding towards other people's religions, cultures, beliefs, way of life. And that same thing should be reciprocated towards me.
What is Islamophobia? Why are people afraid of Muslims? Where do perceptions about Muslims come from? Although black people have lived in Britain for hundreds of years, it wasn't until after the Second World War that large numbers began arriving from the West Indies. Britain had a shortage of workers, and West Indians, who were British Empire citizens, were invited to come and help the country recover from the war. They were to meet a lot of prejudice and discrimination.
Something is holding me back. Is it because I'm black?
A colour bar took hold, which made it extremely hard for black people to find lodgings and jobs.
But the minute that they saw my black face coming on the door, they'd say, "Oh, we're dreadfully sorry, the job is filled."
He told me that there was no vacancy for no porter.
These attitudes were widespread across the whole of society.
They're a nuisance when you've got to walk past them in the streets, they won't move. They're a nuisance at work, they won't work. And for folks who got them living by them, they're a more nuisance still.
I've got to bring this little boy up amongst them. And they're not clean. And the smell of the cooking makes you feel sick.
For young black men, it was the fear of racial harassment and discrimination from the police.
Running from the police.
The relationship between police and young black people had always been uneasy, but the sus laws of the 1970s compounded the feelings of many that the police were racist. Sus empowered the police to stop people they suspected of criminal activity without any evidence of wrongdoing.
I've been stopped previously, and then I've had nothing on me, and they basically just stop and search me and just ask me questions.
Situations like this, events like the Deptford fire, and various anti-police protests over the years have all contributed to the level of mistrust that means stop and search is still an issue between the police and young black people today.
I think it's unfair, obviously, being black myself, and I'm not a drug addict or a criminal. If I was targeted, I wouldn't be very happy about that.
I got searched. My friend who sat in a car who was a known criminal wasn't even asked to get out of the car. White guy.
The attitude they give to the youth is what is the attitude they get back from you. So if they come aggressive, the youth will obviously go back with that attitude.
What are you up to?
For many of us that grew up in London can still remember that the sus laws where, many within the black community were indiscriminately stopped. And these community histories continue. The fact that you're 8 times more likely to be stopped if you're a young black man on the streets of London leads to that suspicion when you recognise that only 13% of those stops will lead to an actual arrest.
It wasn't so much being stopped, it was a question of how they were being stopped.
They just pulled over and says, "Oh, I don't like how you're walking, how your attitude is."
Police are looking at us because we're wearing hoods, and that causes a big conflict, which makes us youth against them.
Are we then talking about only black people?
The Black Police Association have set up a programme to try to build better relations between the police and young people.
White people get stopped on the street, do they?
We can't get away from it. There is still stereotyping. And so the programs that we provide under the Black Police Association really is to educate young people about their rights. So if there is a stop and search, then there isn't so much tension.
Give you a second. If you'd like to just come over here out of everybody's way, I'll explain why I want to speak to you.
But equally, to explain to them what their responsibilities are when they have an encounter with police officers on the street.
Is that I've just received information that there's been a theft snatch down on the high street. The people who are described by the victim as a suspect match your description, okay?
So it could have been anyone that's wearing these type of clothes.
I accept that's what you're saying, and there are other officers out looking for other people.
For example, if we get a call from a member of the public saying that they've just been robbed, they've come off the bus and, let's say, a young black male wearing a black hoodie has come up to them and taken their mobile phone. Now, it wouldn't be right for us to put over the radio to our colleagues to say it was an old, white female, because it wasn't. If that's the information the victim's telling us, we've got to act on that intelligence.
No, I'm telling you, can't search me because it's me, like...
If you'd like to listen, I'll explain all your rights and entitlements. I can't talk if you're talking over me. I'll give you a chance to speak when I'm finished, OK? Here's my warrant card, OK, with my picture, entitling me to do this stop and to search it.
They can understand what it's about. They understand how a police officer should be behaving, and if a police officer is behaving inappropriately, they also know how to lodge a complaint where it can be investigated.
As much as I was being aggressive to her, she never at once raised her voice. She actually showed me her identification that she was. She showed me her badge, and I got the numbers and stuff.
Hopefully, as time goes on, communities will start to trust us more, start to understand what we're doing more, and we will start to understand how we can serve their needs in a more effective way.
If I want to see a change in the way that young people are being treated by the police, the best way to do it is to teach the police how. You can never teach the police on the street how to be respectful, because they're going to think you're disrespecting them, and most of the time you do end up in the back of a bully van.
Which that will help them more, like, understanding about the community and how the youth live and who they are.
And that the police need to understand that young people are quite vulnerable. Even though they might seem quite aggressive, they are quite vulnerable, and that they really do have a heart and feelings.
Why do people discriminate against other people? Where do stereotypes come from? Stephen Lawrence, a young black man, was murdered by a gang of white racists in South London in 1993. The inquiry into the way the murder investigation was handled concluded that institutional racism was partly to blame for the police failure to catch his killers. Institutional racism is about the unwitting exclusion of a group from or by an organisation, and it can exist in any institution, not just the police.
A new campaign has been launched to stamp out racism on the football terraces.
Racism is no longer acceptable on the pitch in football, but many believe that the sport itself is institutionally racist.
But there's lots of black players who've come out of football after 20, 25 years experience, the late 70s, 80s, knocking on doors for jobs and not getting them.
Cyril Regis was one such player. A former striker for England, he found work as a coach after retirement, but never got the chance to manage. He has given up to become an agent, and things don't seem to be changing. Out of 92 league teams, 20% of Premier League players are black, but there are only 4 black managers, all in the lower leagues.
In football, I don't think it's any different to probably business, where people will want to employ somebody that they know and get on with.
You've got the boardroom men who perhaps 50, 60, 70 haven't got a lot of contact with black players and black people in general, and they're thinking, well, do we want a black person running our football club?
Most of the clubs and most of the structures in football are run by white men, and particularly within the clubs, a lot of them were probably playing their football during the 70s. So they've come through with different attitudes and prejudices from when they were young.
You've got to be one of them. Most ex-players get jobs, white ex-players get jobs through contacts, through networking.
Going the other way now.
Bob Reaver has worked as a coach for several professional teams in this country.
Left foot, right foot, both sides of the brain.
And he's heard a lot of stereotypical views. The perception is that they're not smart enough, that they're not going to have the skills required to deal with man management, running a team, being organised. And these are all absolute myths, but people revel in them. Clearly, I think it's a racist view. As a white guy, football people have felt safe, I suppose, talking in front of me. Although, as an Italian boy that grew up here, I experienced many of the same kind of racist views that Asians and blacks did. And I've realised that not a lot's changed.
Paul Davis had an 18-year career at Arsenal, playing over 400 games and winning the Premiership twice. After he retired, he returned to Arsenal as youth team coach, staying there 7 years.
With the intention of getting my qualification and slowly getting the experience and treating it as a career, really, and a new career, a coaching career, and moving up the ladder.
Things didn't work out quite as well as they had in his playing days. Despite getting all the qualifications, he was passed over twice for promotion.
So on the third occasion when it happened, it didn't materialise. Somebody else got the position who was actually far less qualified, far less experienced. I felt, well, there's something not quite right here.
Some black players have been given the chance to manage. In 1999, John Barnes was hired as the new manager at Glasgow Celtic. He lasted 8 months before he got sacked.
If you talk to John Barnes, it's not a problem, but what you find with white managers is that they get another chance.
In the instance with, say, John Barnes at Celtic, I felt that John was trying to get Celtic to actually play football on the deck. Now, when you change the style of a team, you will go through a dip, and it does take time. I feel if they'd stuck with him, they'd probably be far more successful in Europe.
So what happens, you don't get to learn in the job to get that experience and learn from mistakes and be successful.
When I think a community sees that these men are having the door shut in their face, what chance does a lesser-known player or somebody with perhaps no footballing playing background have? You just think, well, there's no way. And we need to open the doors.
People in powerful positions need to really look at this situation and seriously think about why is there so few black players going into management.
We want to be treated fairly. You want the job on merit. We don't want, we can give you a job because you're black, you know, as a token gesture. You know, if the black player or the manager or the coach has all the credentials, it's got built a good reputation and is better than anybody else, give them the job.
Black players may be having trouble getting into management, but young Asians find it difficult to get taken seriously as players by professional clubs. They feel prejudiced views and stereotypes are to blame.
The stereotypes are basically of Asian footballers that we don't eat the right food.
Asian players get labelled as not strong enough because of the way we're built. If you're Asian, you're either a lawyer or a doctor.
That our parents don't back us in football.
I never had any problems in that respect because my mum was fully behind me.
Because I'm so committed to football and I've devoted my whole life to it. The food I eat is basically all good, healthy, balanced diet.
Maybe it wasn't even true in the first place, but because they've kept feeding it into our head, people started to think that, oh, maybe it is true.
A lot of the clubs have their training grounds or their actual stadiums in large Asian areas. You won't see that reflected in the academy with Asian children, so why aren't they being approached? Because when you drive past the local parks, all you see are Asian boys playing football. I asked that question at one particular academy, and they just looked at me in amazement. You're wasting your time with Asians. And that was the reply.
Some of the prejudices that people have really manifested themselves as stereotypes. And one of the classics has been Asians can't play football, Asians aren't strong enough. And we went through that with the black players, but the black players overcame it by showing how successful they were on the pitch.
There are talented Asian players, but getting onto the pitch is easier said than done. Even if they do get a contract with a club academy, they feel they don't get treated equally. Harpal Matharu got offered a 3-year contract but was dropped after 2 because of all the injuries he'd had.
There was another player in the youth team, he was a white lad. He'd done his cruciate ligaments, but was out for roughly the same time as me. He got given an extra year just to prove himself and his fitness. I was really surprised when I didn't get given a year. I thought it was unfair.
Kashif Siddiqui has given up trying to get into professional football in this country. He's been offered a 4-year football scholarship in America, which he has decided to accept.
I weighed everything up and I knew going to America would be the biggest opportunity, because when I went there for trials, I compared here, and just by talking to the coaches, they didn't even look at me as an Asian. It was just they're looking beyond that.
Should you have to go to another country to prove yourself, become pro, now you've got the title professional footballer, you come back and now they start accepting you because you've been at a standard where they didn't spot you and stuff like that.
It's true. Like other players, if you're not Asian, I don't think they'll be thinking, oh, I have to go away, make it professional, and then come back. I think they'll be thinking, I'm going to make it professional in this country straight away, without going on a long journey to make it professional. They got it much easier.
It's just an awareness from clubs and the people, the scouts, and all people in charge to say, look, you know, there are people out there that want to be footballers that are good enough, perhaps. Let's go and have a look at them. But I don't think clubs are really making the effort to do it.
There is an awareness that things have to change if there is to be progress for Asians and blacks in the game.
None of us want to wait 20 years for change to happen. And I think sometimes people do get complacent and say, well, football's open and accessible, do we really need to do anything else? We've taken the view that we do need to do more. We feel we've already done a lot and achieved a lot, but we think there's still more to be done. We're not complacent about it.
You've got to change people's hearts. Perception, you've got to change people's hearts and attitudes.
I think it's going to take a few Asians to break into the Premiership, and then the coaches are going to start realising, because it happened that way with the black players. And I think personally, when it starts happening with the Asians, when there's an influx of Asians coming into first team football, then people, fans, everyone's going to start taking notice.
Move. Get in there, guys. You're standing off and watching. Good play.
What is institutional racism? What needs to be done to tackle institutional racism? Jean Blanchard Azib is a British citizen. He has a good job, owns a house, and drives an expensive car. He is also a refugee, but he tends to keep that quiet.
As soon as you tell them you're an asylum seeker or you're a refugee, they just cringe.
Over the last few years, a lot of prejudices and stereotypes have grown up around asylum seekers and refugees in this country.
I think they should be made to go out and find a job, because the rest of us have to do. We wouldn't be able to go to their country and do the same. They're getting fully furnished houses with everything brand new, no second hand.
All these come across here and they get combinations straight away, don't they? They get loads of help off all these government people and things like that, and we get no.
Most of us in this country have very little contact with asylum seekers, and so all our information about their story comes from what we read in a newspaper or what we see on television.
In July 2003, a story came out in The Sun. And around that story, a whole urban myth has now sprung, so that there are people convinced that this is true. There is a danger that people, will stop thinking about asylum seekers as simply other human beings and will start thinking about them as a lower being, which is then, opens the door to all types of discrimination.
I think we've really forgotten the reasons why people come and claim asylum here. It's very simple. These people are in danger in their own land. They're being persecuted because of their beliefs or because of their social group, and it's so dangerous they've got to get out.
Jean was 15 and a half when he arrived in Britain, alone, after fleeing the Democratic Republic of Congo.
What happened was in the night in October 1998, a group of army people came in our house. It was around about 10 o'clock in the night, and my father tried to defend himself, and then they started beating him up, and they stripped us naked and start like really abusing my sister in front of me. My mother will scream, and they will hit my mother, and they basically shot my father in front of us. They took my mom away and my sister, and they took me in a different van, and I never seen my sister since. Only later when I got rescued, then I found out that my mother as well was killed.
Akila Mansour and her family have come from Pakistan.
We came here because my husband was a journalist, and he exposed the honor killings and the drug smugglers, and also he exposed the corruption of the government. We thought that to come here we can save our children and we can save our lives as well.
Dr. Hamid Latifi came from Afghanistan. He escaped after protesting about females being banned from studying or working.
So we had a demonstration, and I was one of the representative of students, and they took action against us, and they killed a few of our colleagues and my family, and I decided that my life is in danger, so they arranged for me to leave the country.
In 2004, people requesting asylum in Britain mainly came from the following countries. As conflicts and hardship across the world increase, so do the numbers of asylum seekers. They have a right to seek refuge under the 1951 Refugee Convention, which was set up in the aftermath of World War II.
What that obliges us to do is to offer a new life to people who want to come to this country fleeing persecution. It doesn't mean a miserable life. It means a life as an equal citizen of this country.
However, the perception has been that Britain has been taking more than its fair share of asylum seekers.
Most of the world's refugees are in the world's poorest countries. People just flee over borders with whatever they can carry to the nearest country, and most of those are poor and desperate countries themselves. We're the fourth largest economy in the world, but in actual fact we take less than 2% of the world's refugees. So that per head of population, countries like Cyprus and Luxembourg are taking more than we do.
One of the problems that asylum seekers have is that there's no legal way for them to actually come to a safe country. And so you're forced to depend on what are called people smugglers. And they will basically take you and dump you in a country, and you won't necessarily know which country it is.
But at the time I didn't really care what would happen to me then, because everything, I was just at the end of the road. I didn't know the destination. Sat in there, I mean, it wasn't until the pilot started announcing, because they announced it in different language. I couldn't speak English at the time. So when they say in French, they start in English, and they say in Dutch as well, and then they say in French. And then I realized I was heading for London.
When I came to this country, it was like landing on a new planet. I was completely unprepared, and I was shocked with seeing different culture and people and everything.
A myth has grown up in this country that somehow asylum seekers are incredibly well informed about the benefit system, that they arrive at airports and say instantly, where's my housing benefit, where's my council flat? They do not shop around for benefits or for the best economic package they can get.
What asylum seekers want to be able to do when they come here is build a new life for themselves and contribute towards this society. What they find is that they are not allowed to work. So the system creates a situation where they're forced to depend on benefits.
Asylum seekers are not allowed to work until their claim has been agreed. They're entitled to receive benefits, which is set at 30% below normal income support. Akila was a teacher in Pakistan and has never had to rely on benefits before.
When I was sitting at home, I was feeling myself a sick or ill person. and doing nothing. And you know, the empty mind is a devil's house. So me and Mansoor, my husband, we both are doing voluntary work. This is because we want to contribute. I don't like benefits. I don't want, my husband don't want to have even 1 penny in the shape of benefits, because we can work.
For me, it was very difficult to live on benefit, because I thought I'm a doctor, I should work and I'm healthy, but circumstances did not allow me to do that.
Once you have refugee status, you are allowed to get a job. A lot of refugees are highly educated and skilled people, but many find it hard to get work.
I applied for 4 or 5 jobs, but my application was returned to me and they said, you are overqualified. So I couldn't get a job, although they were lower and I wanted to do them, but it was still difficult. I'm going to feel a short break.
Dr. Latifi is keen to resume his career. He has managed to get a job as a healthcare assistant while he studies for his doctor's registration.
My plan is to work as a doctor in this country and to offer more to people who helped us and gave us refuge and sanctuary.
Of course, people fleeing from persecution in their own country and rebuilding their lives here will need a bit of help, and their children will go to school and they will use the health service. But they're not large numbers, contrary to what some of the papers will tell you. And this is about a bigger thing than just how much it costs us economically. It's about helping people who are in desperate danger. And in fact, in the long run, there's a lot of evidence to suggest that refugees give back a lot more than they take out. So some of the things that we associate as most British, just take a couple of those icons of Britain. Those were things that were brought here by refugees.
Jean was given refugee status, passed all his exams, and now he has a good job. He feels he is paying back what he received and is making a positive contribution to society.
Refugees can contribute on many levels. From you name it, they can do it.
One of the ways that would help to change the nature of the way we think about asylum is to put ourselves in the shoes of an asylum seeker and think about that. Think about leaving everything you have behind, your future, your hopes, your dreams, and your loved ones in many cases, having this dangerous and traumatic journey, and then facing all the difficulties of claiming asylum in this country and the very high probability that you won't be believed when you get here.
And the experience I've had, for me just to be alive today, it's a blessing.
Do people have a right to be safe? Are prejudices initiated or confirmed by the media? It's Carnival Day in Burnley, Lancashire, and a group of young white and Asian people are preparing their float for the procession. 4 years ago, this scene would have been unthinkable. In 2001, racial tensions between Burnley's white and Asian population erupted into violence.
Quite scary at the time, but everyone seemed to get a buzz from it as well.
The streets would be packed with people. You'd go around and see bins full of like petrol bombs and golf sticks and things like that, and you'd go into another area and they'd do the same.
My grandma's got a shop, and I was upstairs watching some telly, and all of a sudden my grandma and my mum come up and they started saying, "Henna, stay in here, stay in here." And that's when we heard loads of people shouting, like screaming and stuff, and we heard our windows smashing, and all I could feel was my heart proper pounding. I was so scared because I'm thinking I'm gonna die here, something bad's gonna happen, but thank God it didn't, and we were all okay.
The Asian people fear, they have their own fears against the white people, and the white people have their own fears against the Asian people. And I think it's them fears that caused the disturbances in 2001. Because of the level of fear that people had within them, they just started fighting. So I think fear plays a very big role in racism.
A lack of understanding and integration between communities was blamed as a major reason for the riots.
This is where I live. In this area there are only 3 or 4 non-white households, and also people don't tend to leave this area and don't mix.
This is the area I live in. It's predominantly Asian, so I'd say 95, 96%. Hardly any whites.
This is my area. It's predominantly white and it's literally just 3 streets. It's really self-contained.
If I was seen with a white person talking to him in downtown, I'd get strange looks, not just from whites, but from Asians as well.
They're like very territorial, the people who live there, so if someone goes into their area from somewhere else, it's like, oh, what are they doing here?
There's 2 schools that are mainly Asian populated, and the rest are mainly white.
With the different communities not mixing, it means that each community, they don't really understand each other and like the culture and the values of each other, and so they make assumptions which causes like myths and stuff to arise, and then they begin to like hate each other, and it obviously causes a lot of racism.
Reports looking into the riots revealed that both sides had a lot of racist attitudes towards each other. And breaking barriers in Burnley, a group of young people from the different communities was formed in order to try and break down the prejudices.
Breaking barriers is starting to change, the stereotypical attitude Asians should go back to Pakistan, or that white people aren't just around to claim benefits and stunt dole. And
Some of the people in the group who started were quite racist at the beginning, but like with mixing with different people, they've sort of realised that it's not a like cool thing to be.
Breaking barriers is trying to change these young people's attitudes. They think, with an open mind, not all the things that people have told them. You should go and see for yourself that this person is a genuine person and is not out there to kill you or hate you or be your enemy. We all just want to live our own lives. Everyone wants to live their lives, and if we do it together, the better.
Although it took time for the group to mix, their assumptions about each other gradually began to break down, and they actually realised they had a lot in common.
But what it was, the only barrier that needed breaking within the actual group was the friendship, because nobody knew each other. And once they got to know each other, then they start, that's the basics. Then they start working up, finding out what people's personalities are like, how their minds work, how they live their lives.
Because I just learned a lot more about like their backgrounds and the culture and things, which got me more involved. And learning to know things like that, and it just makes you feel better, and them learning about your life and things, and you feel safe.
As a group, we are like role models. We see ourselves as, that sign of improvement for Burnley, really, and that way forward.
However, it hasn't been as easy to go against the prejudices that exist outside of the group.
We've had quite a few who just left. From peer pressure within their own communities, pressure from parents, unfortunately, and they just couldn't handle it.
I used to get a lot of stick from my friends, but within that group, I made a lot of new friends.
At the start, I got a lot of stick of people for being a Paki shagger and stuff.
The group has found that getting people to overcome their prejudices is extremely hard, but they feel they understand where those racist attitudes come from.
In a lot of people, it's fear of the unknown, it's fear of things that they've never encountered and could be strange, and they might not like, and they never think they might like it.
A lot of the older generation who've grown up with racism, they still have it in them, so they pass it down in a way.
The main area it comes from is parents and friends influences, because people listen to their friends, they want to be in with the crowd.
Fear and ignorance have contributed in keeping the communities apart, but a sense of unfairness and resentment that each side seems to get a better deal has also played its part in fueling racism in Burnley.
A lot of the times in mixed schools or in mixed groups, and people don't want to be seen as being racist, so they take the Asian side, which alienates like the white people who always feel, well, the Asians are getting away with it, this isn't fair, and it makes the problem even worse.
This feeling of unfairness has been exploited by far-right political parties, who have tried to blame the deprivation and poverty that exists in some white areas on the Asians.
Everybody unite together and sort them out, because they're the ones causing all problems.
Yeah, it increased attention that people are like, well, why is that area getting all that money when they don't work? You know, they've got this big house now that's been all done up for them. They don't pay for. The kids have got nice places to play, yet my children are playing football on a football pitch that's full of drug needles or glass. Or it's like, how can that be fair? You know, I work all my life and I pay taxes, yet my house is a 2 up, 2 down terrace that's dropping in bits. Who's going to help me?
I think racism is used as an excuse for people who have felt that they have been given a raw deal. So if they've been trying to get the council to do to do something for them, and they've been trying for years and years and years, and then these political parties come around and they kind of use people's feelings to their own advantage.
Lots of young people were very confused about literature that was coming through their doors and issues about repatriation and stuff like that.
In order to redress the racism that they felt the far right was trying to promote, the group toured a play called Polarized around local youth centres. They've now turned it into a film.
The play looks at a forced repatriation, not just if you're black or Asian.
The main character turns out to be half Italian and ends up getting deported.
Are you ready to go?
Uncle Jamie? What are you doing here?
It's my job now, alright? I'm in the guards.
And it's like that if she would have done something about racism when she was younger, then she could have changed some of the people who made that decision to take her out of the country.
This wasn't how it was supposed to be. And all the time you look at my white skin and blame me. But we all could have done something. Question the hatred, stop the taunts, not use racism as a tool to get what we wanted. We just didn't talk, or learn, or change or understand.
The message of Polarized in a few short words is, don't be prejudiced, don't believe what you hear, don't believe what you're told, go out there, see it for yourself. If you don't know somebody, how can you judge them?
It's not very easy to stand up to racism, but if you have the willpower to say, well, no, I'm not going to be like everybody else, or I'm not going to be like my friends, or I'm not going to be like my family, then it is easy. But you've just got to give yourself that push.
If there's just one person that you change their opinion, then it's all worthwhile, because that can just be passed on.
Because racism incites so much physical, mental and emotional hatred for another race. It just takes over your life, it will, and maybe we'll all see that it is worth fighting.
Why are people racist? Why is racism hard to tackle? How should racism be challenged?
In Great Britain, we are a multicultural society.
Racist people should be confronted by people that are not racist.
It's definitely interesting to have a mix of people. I think it'd be really boring if you had this, because no one would change their ideas or nothing would be new.
Babies are not born with racism. You get born with diseases and stuff like that, but you're not born with racism. Racism is homegrown.
Because at the end of the day, the world, do you know what I mean? It belongs to everyone, so how can you say that because you're born in a certain place, that's where you need to stay? That's what you have to say, basically. I just think it's really, really out of order.
I don't think there's, different races. There's only one race, and that's the human race. That's the human race, yeah.